Go ahead, Suzy.
Hi. Yeah, I'll start for now. Yeah. I'd like to thank you for your donations and to remember that this is our only income. So, okay, so let's go.
Okay, go ahead, Bert.
Oh, all right. Recently something very interesting happened. I became aware that 35,000
350,000.
350,000 Jews from Israel and the United States have actually surrendered to Jesus as their Messiah. Uh, and this is quite a shock and surprise to a lot of people, but it makes me very happy because after all, he is the real deal. Um, what I'd like to mention about this also, which is interesting, and it reminds me of the dimensions that we live under. For example, I remember we were watching a show yesterday of the Nazis and how they started. In 1933, there were two world wars. And the 1930s, it was uh,
The Great Depression.
no, the beginning depression, the third
Oh, the third
dimension,
dimension.
right? Okay, and the third dimension is very, very physical. And then we move on into the second dimension where we became more mental, and also women begin to recognize their rights. The feminine energy was put forward more. More teachers came out from that state. Feminine teachers, women teachers.
That's the fourth dimension, is that?
That's the fourth dimension. Yes, yes. And now we're moving into the fifth dimension. And the fifth dimension is also when we begin to recognize that we are spirit. And that's the biggest step that we can take at this moment. But it's also the one that's going to take the longest and the hardest to accept because there are many of our values that have to be actually faced. Um, one thing that I have that I'm very excited about also is that Jesus plays a very important role in the fifth dimension, and also maybe not many people are aware of this. The Course in Miracles came as a result of the inception of the fifth dimension, and um, yeah, I was going to say about the fifth dimension, right? Okay.
So the fifth dimension, is that was that what started in the 60s with the age of Aquarius?
No. The 50s.
That's the fourth?
Actually the 60s was the fourth dimension.
Okay.
The fifth dimension started. Oh, I don't know exactly when it started. It was maybe a few years ago.
Okay.
Right, and it's going to gain more and more impetus as we go on. And this means, of course, that our ability to understand our true nature is so important. And also talking about understanding our true nature, I had a letter a few days ago from a man. Could you read that?
Sure, sweetie. Okay, he says, "Hi, Burt. I have realized that consciousness is formless and that its absence can never be known. But I still strongly fear death. I cannot accept that death may be the absence of myself and all I love forever. I just become overwhelmed with anxiety whenever I think of myself in the world disappearing, never to be known again. I now reach out to you, hoping you can convince me that one can be at peace with nothingness, lasting forever."
Okay. First of all, there are many misconceptions, and these are very, very common. One of the things is fear of death. First of all, one thing I know for a fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there is no death. I died twice. And death to me was like going from one room into the next. As a matter of fact, I didn't know that I was gone until I saw my body on the gurney at the time in the hospital. Okay. So, so this as far as goes, fear of death. There is no death. But then again, we think that when we shed our body, we won't be able to use the senses. We won't be able to be just like we were and be as alive. This is also not true. When I was without the body, I was clearer than I've ever been before. I saw colors I never knew before, and still now I haven't even seen any like them. Things become very alive. There is no negativity at that point. Love is all around. And although I didn't see spirits around me, yet there was the feeling that I wasn't alone. And I could never feel alone. There was no distance. So there was no up or down or there or here. It's everywhere at the same time. So what I'm saying is that there's an advantage to this. However, many people who became aware of this great advantage, they tried committing suicide so that they can experience it. Well, that is something not recommended. Okay, so in other words, as far as fear of death is concerned, you can forget about it because there is nothing to fear, absolutely nothing. But then again, you raised up a question, and it's something. How did he say that? I think of myself. Yeah.
And the world disappearing, never to be known again.
No, it's not that. He felt that if he disappears, there was something you mentioned there.
I can read it again. Death may be the absence of myself. Anxiety when I think of myself and the world disappearing. Nothingness lasting forever.
Okay, let's address those.
Okay.
Okay. Well, first of all, when we think that we're going to disappear and we're going to die and be no more, that's absolutely nonsense, because you never really existed as you thought you did. You see, you were spirit from the very beginning. In the very beginning, prior to the Big Bang, we lived as pure awareness. In other words, we were known as oneness. And of course, also known as God, because it's all one. Okay? So in that one, there is no separation. When the Big Bang came is because they say that we fell into sin by thinking, by wanting to be separate one from another. And by being separate from another, we started all the hell that can be created through the ignorance of our true nature. For example, if I think I am separate from another person, immediately I see that person as a stranger. But now, as I look at a person, I see them as myself in a different form. See, and this is what has to be understood as far as love is concerned. Love is not acquired, love is awakened. And love awakened means that you are already the very thing you always wanted, and you can never lose it because you never had it as a beginning. It was always, always, always something that the mind can't understand, because the mind cannot understand timelessness. And time never existed in truth, not in the world. So in the world, we live in time all the time. So we have moment of boredom, moment of listlessness, moment of not knowing what to do. We're growing old or getting sick or accidents happening. Well, in the spirit world, these things are unknown. And our true love shines because that's who we are. There was something else that he said.
Death may be the absence of myself. And then he has, I have anxiety when I think of myself and the world disappearing, never to be known again.
Okay. The fear of disappearing is a very common fear, because in the third dimension, or no, they're not the third dimension, this world that we live in, we think of ourselves as very physical beings. And because we think we are physical, because of the body, then we identify ourselves as that. But in truth, when you are out of the body, you don't have the same senses, but you're more alive than you've ever been. In fact, when it happened to me, my eyes were not blind like they are now. Right now, I can't see practically anything. But in that state, I could see colors. Like I said, everything is so clear, so sharp, and I can see behind me, sideways, up, down, everywhere. Because of course there's no body, you see. But the clarity is very. Also, another thing too, the hearing. The hearing is so enhanced that you can hear miles away people whispering if you make a point of it. So what we concentrate on becomes immediate to the moment. What else? What other senses? Now, I don't think that, I don't remember being able to smell. I don't think I had the ability to smell. There were our other sensations. For a moment, I thought to myself, oh, I've got no body. And immediately I raised my hand, which I didn't have at the moment, and it appeared in front of me, all in one split second, and then it disappeared again. So the moment we wish for anything at all, it's immediate, because there is no distance and there's no time. Okay, so what you can expect. Now you might say, but Burt, I hear many times that people go to limbo or suffering or darkness. I don't know of things like that. I might have heard about it, but there's one thing that I know, that if someone has experienced a form of hell after death, it is because they believed in it. And so whatever you create in your mind and whatever you fear comes to you. You see, because fear is a desire, really. You know, what you fear, you create with your mind. And so the things that we fear, we create. So we grow in love by simply seeing that every fear that we have, we see it for what it is, forgive it by seeing that it's a lie, and go beyond it. And as we do that, we grow in our capacity to love more and more and more, you see? Now, the capacity to love is not loving another person per se. It is seeing that there is no other person. There is only you appearing as that other person. So if you offend anybody, you see, and you find fault in another person, it is because that fault you have seen in you. You see, that's what we do in our physical bodies. In other words, we see others as we see ourselves. When you begin to see who you really are, it doesn't matter what the person does, and believe it or not, that this is true. You cannot hate them. You cannot go against them, because at that moment, they're acting according to their ability to believe of who they think they are. And according to that belief, we function, we act in life. You were going to say something.
I have a question about what you were just saying.
Okay.
The fear, well, for instance, in this case, when he says he's afraid of the world disappearing forever, or himself.
Oh,
but
right.
what that is
Yeah.
It's simply the illusion that disappears forever. What is real remains.
First of all, there is no world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, whoa, Burt, don't give me that. It's true. When I returned to the body after my NDE experience, I didn't want to be in the body, not only because it was cumbersome, but because everything appeared so unreal. It's unbelievable. It's just like, my goodness, like, what is plastic, you know? Wherever you go, it's dead. It's not alive. And in the world, there are beautiful things like nature, the grass, the trees, the flowers. That's part of the God nature. And anything made up of the God nature in this other world that we live in never dies. So if you step on a flower, it springs up again once you pass it. See, you can never crush anything or hurt anything. Everything is alive. Did I answer that one?
What about this? He's equating it with nothingness lasting forever. We hear so much about this nothingness, this void, this
See, the
emptiness.
nothingness that we fear is the everythingness, because everything came from nothing. Everything, all is energy. But we can't understand energy even if we're scientists. Energy is invisible. Energy is intelligent. And everything comes from energy. And then people become very scientific and says, yes, I know it creates molecules, it creates cells, other things, atoms. But so this is what creates matter. No, this is scientifically created in order to make sense out of something that people don't understand. These things don't really exist. There is energy, and that energy appears according to how we feel it. So it is the feeling that manifests for us in truth, in reality. And that feeling is always love. It's always beautiful. There is no distance, there is no time, and there is no place. So if I want to be in another country, all I have to do is wish it, and I'm there, you see, because there is no distance. Also, there is no material form in the sense that we see material form. So if you are, let's say, we call it, okay, let's call it heaven, okay, because it is heaven, it is beautiful, heavenly. At that moment, you want to create a house, or you want to create something, whatever it is, you create it immediately. You create it by thought. Thought is very powerful because thought creates. In the world, it is thought that creates, but first we have a plan, and then we follow that plan according to how we saw it in our mind. And outside of form, there is no planning. There is an immediate thing. You see it in your mind, and it manifests immediately. And it's there forever as long as you want it, whether it's a house, a car, or whatever. So you might say, but I won't need these things if there is no time and space. True. But if you want to create a world, just for the heck of it, when you are in that state, then you can create it. So what I'm saying here, I don't want to mention his name. There is nothing for you to fear, nothing. The reason I'm answering it on video and I couldn't write you is because I'm blind, and I cannot write an article. I cannot write anything. It's just that I can't see. So reading it from your letter, having Suzy read it, is the only way that I can answer you. I hope what I've said satisfies, but believe me, try to investigate who you are, find out who you are, really. You know, people go through life, working their life, all their life, until they are so old, they can't walk anymore. And then they wonder why they have, because it goes very fast. I'm 88, and these 88 years have gone so fast, you know. But what I'm saying is that if you live every day without knowing who you are, every day becomes monotonous and dreary and dull and lifeless. And you cannot make it in a way because you are not establishing yourself in reality. You're living from the dream. You think that when we die, it's a dream, but this is a dream. When you get out of the dream, you will find your true home, what you always wanted. This is our nature. This is our true state.
It's very interesting because this is a really common set of questions that we get from people. Everybody seems to be afraid of suddenly disappearing into nothingness or the light or this oneness. But the Course says several times within it that you won't suddenly be thrust into reality. It's a slow, loving, happy dream. You go from a nightmare of guilt and judgment to this happy dream where you've forgiven your brothers, and
You forgive yourself. Right?
This is what the fifth dimension is. It's a seeming spirit coming into the dream.
Beautiful.
And
beautiful,
so
yes.
perception doesn't just go boom and you don't have perception. What happens is you're gently led through a path of love to the point where what the Course calls the real world is so like to heaven that it's just a step away.
That's right.
So I actually have a beautiful quote that could help him understand this a little bit, and it might take away some of the fear with regard to what happens when you realize who you really are. This is from chapter 5 in the Course, textbook 5. Can you imagine what a state of mind without illusions is? How would it feel? Try to remember when there was a time, perhaps a minute, maybe even less, when nothing came to interrupt your peace, when you were certain you were loved and safe. Then try to picture what it would be like to have that moment be extended to the end of time and to eternity. Then let the sense of quiet that you felt be multiplied 100 times, and then be multiplied another 100 more. And now you have a hint, not more than just the faintest intimation of the state your mind will rest in when the truth has come. Without illusions, there could be no fear, no doubt, and no attack. When truth has come, all pain is over.
Yes. When truth has come. Most people never ask, what's it all about? What is truth? But this is the whole point. Now we're in the fifth dimension where we actually start asking the real questions. What's it all about? What is the truth? And every time we ask in sincerity and look for it, we will find that it's the invisible part of us. What is true is something that you cannot see, touch, feel, or taste, but it's there that is acting through you. It is life itself. When you begin to see the truth, you'll find that truth itself cannot be defined. You cannot say it lasts that long. It begins when? No, there's nothing. Truth is that which has always been and always will be, and is the truth of you. In other words, it is what is true about you. Now, why would you want the false? If you start to know what is true. If you start knowing what is true, you will reach a state of happiness and peace you never knew existed. Because the moment you see something as untrue and not lasting, you discard it. As you discard it, something takes its place. If, however, you feel there is nothing to take its place, you start to grasp, you become desperate for some magic or something to make your life worthwhile. Because that's how addictions come into view, for example. Why do people get addicted? Addicted to sex, addicted to drinking, addicted to the world, addicted to certain loud music. Why do we get addicted? Because somehow or other, that action takes us away from thinking from the moment. And it gives us what we think is joy. But do you know that nothing in the world can give you joy. It can give you pleasure, but it cannot give you joy. Joy is something only the child and the realized person can experience. And joy is what it's all about. That joy where every moment is rich and full and alive. So I hope that this was something that you can munch over.
What you were just saying about the truth. So ultimately, the truth is love.
The truth is love.
The truth is
Thank you.
love, but
Thank
it's a
you.
love beyond the love that we all know what it is deep in our hearts, but it's
Right.
beyond the love we experience here.
Right. Yeah. When you think of love, you have an idea what love is. The moment you have an idea what love is, you've already stifled it. It's lost.
Mhm.
You see, you cannot have an idea what love is because love is beyond any thought.
Mhm.
Love is an awareness. It is not a thought.
Mhm.
Thought and awareness, you know the difference between the two, vast difference, okay? But when you realize that you really don't know what love is, but somehow I feel good. And the moment you begin to realize that love always feels good, love always feels familiar, love always feels relaxed, love always feels I cannot sin or feel guilty about anything because there's nothing that can take away that feeling. And when you begin to see that that feeling is not derived from doing something pleasurable, which can become addictive, but simply from the simple things. And the moment you begin to recognize that and you give in to that, it starts growing and growing and growing. And then you begin to live from it.
What's the fastest way to get to that? Is that forgiveness?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Very good.
So the Course in Miracles, which promotes forgiveness as the means to awakening, essentially is to give up. It specifically focuses on your brother, which means other people, because that's where you project your guilt out.
Right.
So the goal of the Course is that you, through your awareness, when you recognize your thoughts, anytime you have a judgmental or negative thought regarding another, you have to question the validity of it.
Right. And not feel guilty for it.
Mhm.
See, this is the point.
Mhm.
See, guilt is one of the worst things that we can experience because it eats at us from the inside. And it can bring all kinds of diseases and maladies because it's horrendous. Okay, so how do you stop the guilt? It's not difficult at all. First of all, there's nothing for you to feel guilty about. Nothing, absolutely nothing at all, except that which you think brings it about. See, we've been raised up in certain religions that tell you the devil exists and hell exists. And they tell you this is a sin and this is wrong and this is this. You begin to believe it, and before you know it, you are creating your own hell. Okay, first of all, there's nothing that can make you feel guilty. And when you look at it, you'll find there was nothing there in the first place to make you feel guilty, except your thought about it. The moment you begin to understand that, that becomes the forgiveness of it.
In the Course, they use in quite a few places the term willingness.
Yeah.
So it's saying what you really have to do is have this willingness to see everyone as innocent. It may sound like a tall order, but that's the goal. That's where you're headed. And so you have to have that willingness. So that's the first step. Because it's ultimately it's you who you are forgiving, because you've projected all this out onto your government.
That's right.
Onto the society you live in, onto your family members who are being unkind or treating you unfairly. All of those beings are your projections outwards.
Right.
And so the answer to everything is love, is forgiveness.
Absolutely. If you're not feeling love, then you know there's something not kosher here.
Mhm.
No, that's what it should
So
be.
when you're feeling
So-
uncomfortable in any way,
When you feel uncomfortable
you
in
know
any
you've
way,
judged.
then that's right.
And you really want to try your best to figure out what thought you just thought prior to this feeling. So
Yes.
through your awareness.
And then you don't judge the judgment. For example, if you feel guilty because you
Had a judgment.
said something
Yeah.
wrong, had a judgment,
Yeah.
okay, you don't judge yourself for
Yeah.
judging that.
Yeah, you just have a willingness to try better the next time.
The willingness to see it, and it's okay.
Right. And to
As
see
a matter of fact,
yeah.
as a matter of fact, if you find yourself judging and creating any form of separation between others, creating unhappiness, for example. Just look at that. Really look at that. How do you feel about it? You see? Now, if you feel bad about it, you try to get rid of it, it gets worse. If you try to control it, it gets worse. If you say to yourself, I shouldn't feel like this, it gets worse. So what do? Easy. Thank you for making me aware
Beautiful.
of this.
Mhm.
You see?
Mhm.
And the moment you bring awareness into it, that very awareness itself will tell you why you're thinking this way. And through this understanding, you become freer and freer and freer. You see? And the whole point of spirituality, of growth, is to realize who we are. And who we are is grander than we think. And it is not being smart. It is not being an intellectual. It is not being clever. It is not getting awards for being the smartest guy on the lot. No, it's how sweet, intelligent, and loving you are. It's almost like going back into the child. Um, Kenneth Wapnick, he wrote about the 3 states of man. And he didn't come up with that himself. Actually, it's a very long study. It was from some way back philosophers. But anyway, there are 3 stages that we all go through. The first stage is the camel. The second stage is the lion. And the third stage is the child. So in the beginning, we're just like a camel. We walk very slow. We don't think. We get tired very easy. We're kind of, whatever. I mean, I've never seen a camel. I've never been with a camel, but that's how I think. Okay. So the camel is trotting. He's not interested in truth. He's not interested in anything, actually. He just wants to be left alone or whatever. Okay. But that's the first stage. The second stage is the lion. The lion, we see it everywhere. You go to the States, America, and practically everyone is a lion. A lion is a person who's always going. I must make more money. I must earn more. I I must have a big house. I must have a beautiful car. I want to be better than the next person. You see, that's just what a lion is. A lion is always grasping, wanting, needing, and fighting for what you want all the time, always, never satisfied. But eventually you come to the point, just like Lester Levinson, at 40 years of age, he had everything. He had planes, he had sailboats, beautiful, wealthy man. Okay, but he suffered a heart attack. It was so serious that the doctor told him, said, if you bend down to tie your shoes, it might be your last move. That's how sick he was. So anyway, so he went up to his penthouse. He stood in front of an open window looking at life. And they told him, he said, do as little as possible. And that way you survive another few weeks. And so naturally, being very intelligent man, being a very aware man, despite his riches, he asked himself, what is the most important thing in life? And he began to discover that he had a lot of women and he loved women. But when he was making love to the women, he felt good at the moment, but then he forgot them. And then it occurred to him, it wasn't when he was
being loved.
Being loved.
It was when he was loving. Right?
When he was loving. That's right. And he thought that, when did I have the most joy with those 10 women who are all beautiful? When it was with this one, because when I was with her, even if we didn't make love, I still felt good. Okay, so therefore, my love for her. And then he began to emulate this kind of love for everything he saw outside his window, that car, that boy, that child, whatever it was. He began to throw himself into that form of love. Well, anyway, to make a long story, this is a true story. To make a long story short, he within 1 month he was able to start walking fast, to build up his stamina. But he kept on insisting on seeing things that he loved. We went with friends whom he really enjoyed being with, that he could love. And the more he loved, the greater his energy. And then he lived up into his 80s, but he came to a point where he wanted to go home. And so he lived somewhere in his 80s, he left the world. But his philosophy, his teachings were so simple. His name is Lester Levinson, in case you're interested. He's one man I admire greatly. He became so innocent, he became like a child. Truly, he became like a child. From the lion, he became the child full of love, full of joy, full of enjoyment. And he has his own, it's called the Sedona method. And he founded the method of letting go, learning to, that's like forgiveness. Learn to let go. See, because whatever you hold on gets you. Whatever you let go releases you. And so that was his lesson, so beautiful and so innocent.
It's very interesting what you just said, because the thoughts that we have, and in a way, this is going back to what Byron Katie said, we have so many thoughts that we just blindly believe are true, and we never really question them. And if we were to ask one question, is there any way I can know if this is true? The answer would probably be no. So here you are letting yourself be upset over a thought that you can't even know if it's true or not. It's silly, isn't it?
Right.
It's an illusion.
Right. Yeah. And if you begin to question all your beliefs, you'll find that you're left with none. Buddha said, question every belief you have. When you get rid of all of them, now you know who you are. But that's a tall order, because we have beliefs in so many things. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this I should and I shouldn't. We're filled with beliefs about everything. But the point is that the belief is not truth. Truth is that which is unchangeable, has no beginning or end. It's solid, very solid. What can be? What do you think is truth then? If it's very solid, it's not a belief.
Nothing.
The nothing
Love.
itself, isn't it?
That's right. It's
Love.
these
when you go
beautiful
back,
essence.
when you go to the emptiness of anything, when you go into the emptiness, who's speaking?
It's okay that somebody's got their computer unmuted, probably by mistake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whenever you go into anything complete, but I'll bring it in anyway. Think of the word is, I-S, and you have the truth. Anything which is the truth. One time a child asked his father, he said, Dad, what is God? And his father started thinking, God, I cannot tell him it's an old man up there in the sky. I cannot tell him it's a very good man who punishes or rewards. I cannot tell him that which created the world. My son won't know. And then he came up with the idea to his son. And he said, son, he said, God is. And left it at that. He said, mull it over. It took him many years before the son actually understood what the word is. And I think he wrote a book about it, incidentally. The philosophy of is. So anything that is has no future, no past, has no beginning nor end, which is empty of everything. That is the truth. You see?
Mhm.
Because from emptiness comes everything. Everything comes from emptiness. See? So first empty yourself from everything that you think you know, and then become the child. When you become the child, no matter how old you are, you become like a child. You become innocent, easygoing, trusting, open. And then what happens? You become is. And that is the child. That is the isness of what we call, the heavenly state, or the perfection of being.
And
Yeah.
that's the result of forgiveness. Is that
That's the
is state.
result of forgiveness.
So if we once we start to touch, just taste this isness a little bit and see how beautiful it is and how wonderful it is and how joyful it is, the more we see that, the more we have a motivation to forgive and no longer project
Right.
judgments on
Because we don't need to hold on to anything, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Because we want that so bad.
Right.
And it's win-win situation, because the way we get it is by taking all our judgments off of everyone.
Right. Right.
So everybody is like, it then becomes like Christ to you.
That's
You
right.
just love them fully.
That's right. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So the word is quite something. If you want to tackle it and meditate on it, I wouldn't suggest you don't. But don't expect an answer right away. It comes very, very slowly. And then you say, what is? Is this flower is? Well, in a way, yes, isn't it?
But it goes, it comes
But
and
it
goes.
it comes and goes, right?
Mhm.
So the part of going and coming is not is, but it's nature.
The sense of
There's
awe
a sense of, yeah,
and the
as
beauty is
yeah.
is.
And then you go to something else, is that is. You see, just like we say, God is, that which is has no beginning, no end, just is. Think of something that just is, other than God. Just
Life, existence just is. Awareness just is.
Awareness.
Mhm.
Awareness just is. Not what you're aware of.
Mhm.
You see, that becomes consciousness.
It's-
Consciousness appears to be is, but it changes, fluctuates. And although it is eternal in nature, with its beliefs and everything else comes and goes eternally. So. Yet you cannot say consciousness is, but you can say life is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I was just thinking about this letter again. He says, I have realized that consciousness is formless and that its absence can never be known. Well, in a sense, its absence is awareness.
Its
and awareness
is awareness.
Yeah, so it's
That's
it
beautiful.
is known.
Yeah,
See, again,
that's right. Yeah,
there's
yeah.
fear in that sentence.
That's
but
right.
It's
Yeah,
the pure
yeah.
being, the awareness.
Yeah.
Where there's
Because-
nothing to fear.
Yeah. We fear the unknown because
For-
it's something that the mind can't understand, cannot grasp. Anyway,
Right. Um,
yes,
Bert, I think it's time for us to have a discussion. It's 4:45. You covered quite a bit today. I do want to open up the discussion with you, going through this question with you. I think many of us are like this, like myself. In the morning, I think my ego wakes me, and it can get negative energy quite early in the morning. This on seeming for to live, to realize that we are somehow on a mission because we are alive. So that will get into you particularly early. For example, when I send my kid to school, I would sense that some of the negative energy could be triggered, going through a few stages. The first stage being you're completely unaware of that energy. You're completely
good.
dictated by that. And the second, you are somehow aware of it, but there's nothing you can do over it. You just can't help, you know. stage, I think, is you are aware of it, but you need to remind yourself that this is illusion, and um, you want to try not to fall into the trap. You want to try not to be influenced by your energy. However, sometimes you can control. Sometimes you could eventually still be triggered. And when the trigger comes, when you are triggered, you were pretending all along that this is illusion, and you finally released your energy, and there could be a sense of spontaneity, if you know what I mean,
Yes,
when
no,
you,
what you're saying
even
is
when you
beautiful.
anger.
It's great.
I
Yes.
want to ask you, is that just a feeling that we satisfy our ego, or why
You
is
don't
that? How do we
satisfy,
get
no, no. Anything that comes to the answer of is does not satisfy the ego at all. The ego doesn't understand is. It has no ability to understand at all. However, when you persist in something because it's happening with everyone, and what you said is very beautiful, okay? You keep on until you begin to see what it's really meaning to you. And what it means to you is that there's a point you don't understand, and now you want to look at it, you see? And by looking at it, you know what I mean by looking at it? I don't mean, it's looking into it. What is
But
it?
it's the awareness of the thought, because I used to have the same problem. Every time I would awaken, some thought would grab me, an ego thought would immediately grab hold of me and try to set my day based on that.
That's right.
And as soon as I started becoming aware of that, I started to laugh at it, and it no longer controlled me anymore.
Now, when you started to laugh at it, you transcended it, right?
That's right.
You're able to overcome it. That's what you do, right? To see that
I
it's nothing
find
serious.
the challenge I find the challenge being just like Susie said, whenever we feel, we are under the illusion that we are on a mission, big or small, that we will be distracted and fall into this trap. But help to be on a mission, right? Like for example, today I did my recycling, and I went pick up my son. There was nothing important, but whatever mission you're on, large or small, I find that you are is not to let go. Um, so this is a seeming dilemma. It's not about, doesn't really bother me, but how can I
The point is
reckon
to
this?
ask
How
yourself,
could we
am
get
I?
past the third stage
Are you saying something like
without trying? Yeah.
when you're saying like when you have repetitive chores you have to do, you find that you're not in the state of awareness at that moment? You're pulled into the world and into an ego state. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, not really, not really.
No.
I mean, what I meant is, unless I'm really doing nothing, right? Purposeless, no goal whatsoever, then I think is eve the awareness. But whatever mission we are on, the mission could be very small, could be running to grocery store, could we do whatever. Stress is about, there's something you think you are on a mission, then you set a goal for yourself. You becomes narrow-minded.
Right. So
Would
the
be,
ego
hey,
has you. The
so
ego's
how do we how can we be on the mission without having our mind involved? Is that
You cannot not have our mind involved. As a matter of fact, looking at the involved mind is part of the practice of mindfulness. You see that whatever the mind is giving you as excuses to get out of a dilemma that you can't reason out or arrive at any, but it creates more confusion, you'll find, than answers. So what you do is really look at it for the way it actually is, and you'll find, you might say, but if I look at it, aren't we returning this to the same ball, what we started? Uh, when you start looking at something, no matter how simple it is, it's amazing the wisdom that will come from it. Use it as a puzzle, for example, or as one of those quirky ways that masters use to enhance expansion of consciousness. Use it as that. Say, I'm going to resolve it. I'm going to see it as it actually is, and then leave it as lay it aside for a while, and then get back to it, and you'll find that there are answers to it you didn't know that was there. You see, and that leads you beyond it. In other words, every time that you find something is holding you back, do not fight it, do not struggle with it, do not get hyper. Just get to see it just as it is, and then after you see it for what it is, put it aside. You see, you might write it down in a scrapbook or whatever, and keep on like this, and then you'll find that, oh, it was an idea, but I wasn't ready for it yet, maybe. It's been said that many inventors have used this method, or people who wanted to develop a very advanced system, and they couldn't come to a conclusion about it. They left it, but they didn't ignore it. They left it, but they understood it. And then one of these days, it comes. Said, oh, so that's what it was. See, and then you work at it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and you'll find it can lead you to enormous ways of invention, creation, expansion, understanding. Unless, of course, it dissipated a lot of energy and it made you too confused about it, too caught in it. And then you have to be the judge that, no, this is wasting my time, and you give it up. But what I'm saying is that always use your awareness first instead of the thought. To think about something is to almost make you always, not always, but mostly going around in circles. But when you employ your awareness, something else again.
I love that you just said that, because sometimes there's a trick. Say we have to do these repetitive chores every day. Our mind, in amongst it, we have to do this, turn here, get that, do this. And we think that's all thought driven. And we think that's what's causing us not to be in this moment of isness. But it's actually an underlying thought that says, oh, this is boring. Mm-hmm. Or I don't have any joy. Or the idea, the joy is our natural state. So doing a chore doesn't take your joy away. That's an ego trick. At the same time, you can catch the ego is telling you that, no, I'm real, and you really have to do these chores, and you're really going to be miserable, but it's not the case. And catching that thought is the freedom. Catching that thought that's woven in, whatever it be, boredom, annoyance, tedium, or this keeps me from doing what I really want, or whatever those thoughts are that come. Catching those is the path to freedom.
Very good. Yeah. In other words, employing awareness.
Employing awareness, just like you said.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to address a question from Tayyib. Tayyib asked regarding, I think, social issues. This is how it goes. Dear Burt, I'm living in Punjab, Pakistan. Our society has higher patterns, and I observe that there are inequality, injustice, and human slavery. What is the role of structure of society on our experience? As long as we are looking outward, then how can we experience the truth which we are? I guess the question was about, the question was about looking around, if we find ourselves in a society where there are inequality, suffering, all that, and it's overwhelming. It's now having lived in different societies, I know, like in Vancouver, it's relatively easy to see love because you see a lot of warm, friendly, and orderly social structure. But when you live in a country where, you know, such as described by, or if you live under a condition as in India today, where there's such a breakout of the virus, and
That's
people
right.
are dying because of lack of oxygen. So how does that play into our spiritual, you know,
Well, first of all,
understanding of the
yeah, in the spiritual sense, you're given many trials. Part of the process of growing up is facing these trials, and without fighting them or resisting them. The moment you resist a trial that you've been given, it gets worse. However, if we sit with it and try to look at it, we might find reasons why it's there in the first place. Chances are, if it's a problem, we created it. But when we start to discover how we created it, then we start to transcend it. But I know in India, my goodness, now the toll, what has it reached now?
I'm not sure what the number is, but apparently India is having 200,000 to 300,000 people.
So the numbers are roughly, the official number is roughly about 1 million cases in 3 days. Now, I think it's just for us to imagine a situation where we really live around people, everybody around us need help, including ourselves. Then in that situation, how do we forgive it? How do we, you know, the spiritual state that we are talking about right now?
There's only one
ignore
truth, and the truth in life is that we are all one family, one being. So when someone is suffering, you don't think about how to help them, you just do. But how to help someone in need also is not to is to help them to find out that they can help themselves, in other words, you know. Because there is a help that you can give someone to the point where they begin to rely on you. You don't want that. And it's not very helpful because they become dependent, you see, and there's nothing worse than dependence for suffering to continue. So you give them independence by finding out somehow or other what they're doing that is causing this problem. And if they're willing to look at it, now you're helping them. But there is no quick and fast solution. It's all evolution. It's all evolution of love. We're all growing all the time, learning to understand. But we can help others by simply helping them to see what they're causing themselves. That's the big help. If they don't want to hear it, then you leave them alone. They want to hear it. If a person doesn't want to understand or blocks you off, then you have no right to interfere and you let them be. You see, but the only way to help is to look at it both together and see whether he's creating it, but is not aware that he's creating it. And then you talk about it. But
Tayeb is also asking whether, sorry, Bart, you want to finish? I was saying
it's 5
Tayeb is
o'clock.
also asking whether
Yeah.
Bert, you have, yeah, it is 5 o'clock.
Yeah. So
just a quick question, Bert. Do you have any?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we want to finish.
Okay. All right. Okay, everyone.